Some may not know this, but while I may just seem like another nerd in the general gaming community, when it comes to the Malaysian populace, no man is a greater Mario encyclopedia than I. Not bragging or anything, but I have played at least 60 Mario games for a lifetime. And that's not even counting all the spin-offs generated by the other Mario characters. We've had games like Luigi's Mansion, Yoshi's Island, Wario Land, and Super Princess Peach spawning around the franchise. Now that said, there's always room for Mario's first arch-nemesis to make his own protagonistic debut. Please give a shout out to the living legend himself,
Coconut cream pies.
Donkey Kong succeeded at building his image as an important character to the Marioverse. While he's been here since the dawn of time, a big part of his legacy is thanks to Donkey Kong Country, a series of platforming games surrounding Donkey Kong and his fellow Kong buddies, traversing the jungles of Congo Bongo to defeat the nasty Kremlings and their evil King K. The early Trilogy series on the SNES has become a classic and a staple upon both Rare and Nintendo's series of success. And from there, it only gets higher and higher and although, and I'm not ashamed to admit this, maybe not, I've only just started playing these games a couple years back. The only DK game I've played during childhood is Donkey Kong 64. Then again, I guess that game did give me a good general idea of the series' tone. So needless to say, this is gonna be a review done by an old fan's fresh pair of eyes. For now, we'll be taking a dip into the SNES trilogy and push forward from there. Let's break the barrel and visit what's inside. The original Donkey Kong Country was Rare's shot at revamping their Nintendo-bound platformer series and one to kickstart their victorious streak to come. You play as Donkey and Diddy on a journey to recover their stolen bananas. It's as simple as that. Meanwhile, we do get to appreciate how good the graphics are. The game was Rare's attempt at utilizing their newest silicon graphics technology, and the end result really shows their pioneering skills. Donkey Kong Country looks gorgeous. The 3D rendered sprites has just the right amount of style and polish to them that it creates a really comfortable look for the series. The first game started with simpler textures over jungles, tree houses, mines, and water cavern backgrounds with an occasional graphic of ice sprinkled in. A few other things worth mentioning is how the lighting shifts mid-level based on the change in time as you progress. Like how the sky gets darker, simulating the vibe of sunset. Even with this simplicity, it pops out really nicely and set a great precedent of what's to come in the future. The gameplay is a simple, but also unique and bouncy take on platforming. Donkey Kong moves and jumps on enemies as you expect, and he can even pass the front line to Diddy for more agility at the cost of strength. You got various different Kremlings as your enemies like the jumping critters, the bomb-tossing clump,
I like 'em chunky,
and my toy crocodile that I lost 16 years back. Others include Naughties, Chompers, Zingers, and Neckies. You got plenty of eye-catching collectibles like the Kong letters and the animal statues, which plays a bigger part in the game than simply being one-ups, which I'll get to later. The game is not afraid to toss a few curveballs at an occasion. Stuff like barrel cannons and minecarts sure does spice up the environment of the gameplay, albeit pretty cheap with their body count. Then there's the animal buddies, which are always some of my favorites of the game's features. Temporary handicaps specializing in speed ramming, hovering, and attacking underwater is always nice to have, given how limited your initial movements can be. Also, I have to draw attention to the soundtrack. Most of it is beautifully somber. It gives the game a weirdly calming and gloomy vibe, which matches surprisingly well with the constant cloudiness and evening overtones of the surrounding area. Even the tense boss music is pretty subdued as far as boss themes go. They may not be Grant Kirkhope, but boy, there are some good, feely music. And in the end, that's all that matters. Right off the bat, the standard it's set for presentation and concept of gameplay leaves a lot worth the remark of praise. But even still, not all starts are perfect. And in Conky Dong's first country escapade, the rigidness is far from subtle. The overworld, while colorful and diverse, is pretty lacking in thought, and that's mainly because of the limitations you're given when traversing through. In each world of the game, you meet up with some of your Kong companions. Cranky gives you tips while insulting your birthright, Candy saves your game, and Funky takes you across the different worlds. Not much wrong with Cranky's trash talking, ironically enough, but it's the others who really needed to rework their business. Funky's airport is the only way you can travel across worlds in this game, and Candy's save point doesn't always appear early in a world. There are some worlds in the game that are so hard, they eat up on your extra lives faster than DK can even finish his banana horde, and that guy can never have enough of the potassium pickles. When that happens, you're set to lose all your progress and start over from the last save, most likely the previous world. You gotta refight the boss and redo the stages you already beat just to get back to where you were. And given how easy it is to lose a life in this game, that's gonna happen a lot. It won't take long before you start to hate the minecart and ice cavern levels for how blood-sucking they can get. Granted, 1-ups aren't hard to grind, but you still gotta travel across the map just to get them from the easy levels, which won't be a big deal if you don't have to keep relying on Funky to do it for you. It's a pointless inconvenience that really doesn't need to be there. Something Rare seems to be making an odd habit with. Stuff like this isn't so bad with a lot of NES games since those tend to have less lengthy and detailed level designs. This game does, and rewinding to those spots after you should already clear them can really sour the replayability experience. Speaking of replayability, the game has a few bonus rooms that you can find while trekking the jungle's lands. Each level has 2 bonus rooms, but don't expect none of them to be rebellious about it. These rooms do add a nice flair to the game's content, offering you additional bananas, 1-ups, and other collectibles. But there's a catch. These rooms are part of the game's completion rate. A seemingly strange thing to make a big deal out of, but it could still work if handled right. Here though, hardly. The bonus rooms only exist to give you ancillary collectibles, and didn't offer you so much as an indicator of progress. There's no way to tell if you completed a bonus in a level, so should you miss one, you're gonna find yourself scurrying around from across the whole game just looking for the couple bonus rooms you missed. Granted, you could just make your own checklist to mark the levels you completed, but nobody's got time to do that in a game where all they do is collect bananas at every step. Okay, my complaints do seem severe, and yeah, they do roughen the experience for me when the game could otherwise have been so much better, but still, I can't say I don't see why the game worked as well as it did for most people. It's still pretty, soothing, and challenging all the same. For the most part, it's not painfully hard, but it does have a few sour moments that holds it back from offering a spotless experience. And hey, for all the disses I may throw, I gotta give the final battle a pat on the back. The duel with K is simple, yet wholly satisfying. On top of the rambunctious gangplank galleon playing throughout the fight, the Croc King's arsenal of attacks ranging from the crown toss, to cannonballs, to sporadic stomping, keeps the fight constantly on edge. And you just gotta love that kick in the shin mid-battle. Lovably cruel as they continue to be, that Rare. Donkey Kong Country may be far from perfect, but it's still quite a package. Most of its gameplay is still good fun, and it paved a shining golden road for our favorite ape as a respectable icon across Nintendo's legacy. And I wholeheartedly tribute it for that. Well, I sure know everyone's not gonna be satisfied with that half-baked positivity, but it is my honest look on it. I still love Donkey Kong Country for what it is, but I have to be fair and deem that it doesn't have to be this messy. And now with its sequel, it's gotta go up should it expect to reach its full potential as a true classic. So the question is, did the sequel go high enough? Yes! I could take it slow and give a brief introduction to this game firsthand, but hell with that noise, I'll just say it as it is. Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy's Conquest, is my favorite 2D platformer, and one of my top 5 favorite games of all time. It's that good! Right, anyways, being a sequel to a delicate classic, it's only expected that we see some progress from what the predecessor had to offer. In this episode, Donkey got button-napped by our favorite Croc crew, and Diddy sets off on a quest to rescue him. With the help of his new buddy Dix, they make a splendid team of croc-kicking simians. So to start, let's look at the improvements. Saving in this game is dramatically more convenient as wrinkly Kong stations her school not far from the first few levels in each world. This decreases the likelihood of having to repeat a lot of levels and takes away the stress where they don't belong. The bonus rooms actually have indicators marked by the quantity of DK coins you collect. It's still a little vague about the clearance on each level, but it's still far more convenient than what the previous game had. Now with that out of the way, let's look at the really good stuff, because holy nasi lemak wrappers is there a lot to unpack. Diddy plays exactly as he did in the first game, being the agile player of the duo. Dixie replaces DK's strength with her ability to twirl and float through the air. Wow, now I feel dirty thinking Tiny was the coolest. There's also a partner throwing ability, which gives the duo more offensive output to compensate for the lack of DK. Even with the lack of muscle, it still feels great playing as the chimp couple and utilizing her abilities throughout the many stages. And oh boy are the stages something else. The first game has a more linear focus in terms of stage design, mostly following a straightforward point A to point B formula. Here, the stages have so much more going on. Tight platforming, layouts that vary between horizontal, vertical, and all-around exploration, and that's cutting down the puzzle and chase levels. There's more focus on taking your sweet time in this game and give a good lookout on your surroundings for hidden collectibles and solutions. Not to mention, the animal buddies got an upgrade. Bouncing high with a rattlesnake and generating platforms as a spider seems like it gives the game a hell of a lot more candy to chew on. And you know what? I sure chewed those candies hard. Not that one though. The world design and atmosphere goes above and beyond this time. Damn, this game is wonderful to look at. There are so much more diverse locations that weren't in the first game. Volcanoes, funfairs, pirate ships, castles, you name it. They are just as aesthetically pleasing as the first game's designs, and offer even more variety to love. Even the music gets a tune-up. A lot of the soundtrack is much more upbeat and tense, complementing the chaotic scenery of this game, as opposed to the somber tone of the first game. That's not to say it doesn't have its own set of serenades, of course. The Bramble themes, man, they are bizarrely calm for levels that are built on pure and utter despair. And then there's the bosses. Woo! The first game's bosses are fairly simple, with an occasional twist in the form of tense rematches. Here, almost every boss is original and they're all exhilarating. Between the unique methods of damage dealing and diverse boss patterns and biology, these are some of the best roster of bosses I've seen in any platformer ever. And that music. Let me tell you, the tension doesn't drop at all in the finale. Our Croc boss is now captain of the airship, and his attack pattern is downright furious. This might just be the hardest boss in the series, and for good reason. While it may be drawn out, he has enough weapons in his arsenal to keep the fight interesting, notwithstanding how many rematches you gotta deal with. And boy, I could listen to those horns and flutes all day. Even with the less than perfect bonus indicator, this game is still insanely replayable. It has so many good stages and bosses that playing it myself felt like a spectacular lesson in good game design just based on experience. No amount of praise could ever exert how much I love this game. I'm sure anyone else can agree that it is the best game in the trilogy. So for those of you who haven't had the fortunate take on this masterpiece, gladly do yourself a favor. For all the things that it got right, this conquest is one worth the telling. Well, I hope you all enjoy watching me gush uncontrollably for a change, but given the nature of this game, I suppose no one can really blame me. I poke fun at Rare, but when they stick their best foot forward, they can sure find ways to tear the fabric of gaming's pinnacle. Then again, it's best that we treasure the greatness they offer, because sometimes it doesn't always turn out that way. What's a trilogy without one more game to complete the triangle, eh? Coming out of the helm of the second game, Donkey Kong Country 3 Dixie's Double Trouble seems to think outside of the box with its approach in the series' flow of gameplay and aesthetics. It works in places, but the whole package, well, let's have a closer look. This time, both Donkey and Diddy are kidnapped and Dixie's got to set out for their rescue. Along the way, she's accompanied by Kiddy Kong, the game's new muscle boy. We get some returning faces like Wrinkly, Funky, and Swinky. Anyone remember him? Whatever. Given how grand the second game is, it's hard to imagine this game going anywhere near as far and beyond. Because of that, it made a lot of changes to paint its own identity. The music and atmosphere are much more bright and sunny in tone, and there's a greater focus on puzzle solving and gimmick goals, rather than the streamlined challenge the other games had. A lot of these changes don't sit well with everyone, assuming the embarrassingly biased commercial isn't a big enough turnoff.
Donkey Kong Country 3 starring Kiddy Kong.
And I can't pretend I don't feel the same way for most of these downpours. But you know what? It's not fair to pretend the game doesn't do anything admirable either. There are some clear step-ups from the previous installments here. The overworld is not only colorful, but free-range exploration makes it so much more lively. And yeah, I blather about the bonus indicator all the time, but this game finally got it right. The yellow flags indicate how close you are to your collection quota every stage. Your pencils and papers should be glad they're getting their day off for real this time. Hell, I got no qualms with the extra collectibles themselves either. It can be fun to wiggle around the overworld and uncover secrets at every corner where it counts. The content of the levels themselves were met with mixed results. On one hand, we still got a new roster of animal buddies, even if they're not perfect. On the other hand, Dixie is fun as always, but Kiddy is not met with the same fanfare. Sure, he's got some of his own special perks, like slamming through floors and skipping over water, but he lacks any conventional abilities that makes him stand out over, say, Donkey or Diddy. Because of that, he hardly ever stands out as a team player. I personally don't hate it though. At least Kiddy's not all that slow, and it does feel nice seeing the impact of his strength ripping through the stage's more fragile spots. Adding on to it, the atmosphere of this game is weird, especially considering the type of aesthetic the previous games built themselves upon. Having this bubbly and childlike vibe to the look and feel gives it a distinctly friendly impression. But oh man, the game doesn't escape its darker tones, of course. A lot of the less bright levels have this really eerie tone on its surroundings. Combining these two near polar opposite vibes seem to add more of that bizarrely unsettling feel of the childly innocence the brighter levels originally felt like. And it's kinda fun that way. Nice to see the series never lost its undertone across these games. While those I'm willing to let slide, I'm not super big on most of the other, more legit blunders. For one, the gimmicky levels get tedious after a while. I respect the intuition to make every level distinct and varied, but they eventually choose to focus on these more than a traditional DKC level. I couldn't be bothered to care about the auto-scrolling and squawk levels when there's not enough tense platforming to balance it out. Second, and my biggest peeve with this game, the bosses suck. On top of the music being forgettable noise, the battles would have been interesting with the different approaches it takes fighting them, if the mechanics surrounding them weren't so finicky. I can't say I enjoy being pushed into bottomless pits by water squirts when it's already awkward enough to control Ellie switching sides between the area. The snowman fight was unique, but it's not as intuitive as you'd expect, and chaos is about as drawn out and frustrating as trying to peel open an actual can with a crocodile head over it. The only boss I liked is the first boss. It's simple enough that it's fun, and the appearance of that freakish dental figure is undeniably a memorable sight. Wish I could say the same about the final boss though. Rolstein here is not as fun as he looks. Padding slowly through the stage and being able to only damage him every minute and a half is way less exciting than what it could have been. The bonus rematch is slightly better, and it helps that it's drastically different too, but it could definitely use being less specific and damage spongy. And come on, it's the third Donkey Kong Country game and you still can't play as DK? What's that bull? It seems like they're not able to accomplish implementation of more than 2 playable characters until like the 5th game. It admittedly could have been so much more fulfilling to have unlockable characters this late in the series, but sticking with what we got, it's passable I guess. Donkey Kong Country 3 lives up to its subtitle. It has Dixie, and it certainly is a lot of trouble. It's clear it had to take a different approach to stand out compared to the second game, but it sure left a lot of room for refinement. Granted, I'm not as upset with the game as most. Hell, I'd argue I enjoyed this more than the first one at the very least. It may have its stutters, but it's still a competent experience as far as these games go. If it can at least fulfill that play, I'd say it's still a pretty good concoction at its own right. And that concludes the SNES trilogy of Donkey Kong Country, and what a ride it was! It's nice to look back at the experimental days of Nintendo, and the amount of beautiful packages we can get as a result of the attempts made to expand upon their lovable characters and worlds. Lucky for Donkey, it all turned out remarkable, and things only get better with every grand focus. I suppose I should give my word on the GBA remakes at least. They do have their own neat additions like more competent travel and save features and additions of the story, but apart from that, they're not that much more special than the originals. I'd say they're worth picking up for players who seek a more convenient build for the game, especially considering the first game. But for the most part, the originals, specifically 2, are just generally better looking and sounding, and the experience felt more solid overall. I'm glad to have given this series a shot despite being a latecomer. You might see a trend here that I've been cherry-picking games that I didn't grow up with despite having high nostalgia value for them. Well, don't expect me to stop anytime soon because it's only going north from there. But if you insist, I can start talking about something that I do have a concrete childhood connection with. Whatever it might be, let's just say the execution is just as formidable as it is on paper.